Good evening from Finsbury Park. When will it stop? The latest on London's third terror attack in as many months. Muslim worshippers were mown down by a man driving a rented van. 10 were injured, 1 died. Tonight, the driver is named as people here express their shock.
Just went to my brother. He was having issues breathing. He couldn't breathe, he couldn't move because he obviously had injuries in his back and his pelvic area as well.
And I'm live in North Kensington as the number of people killed in the Grenfell fire rises to 79. Today, firefighters were hugged by survivors as London observed a minute of silence. While hundreds marched through West London calling for justice for victims.
The cordon here signals yet another major incident in the capital. Once again, many Londoners woke to distressing news. Once again, a man appears to have hired a van, then deliberately ploughed it into a crowd. This time, that crowd was Muslim worshippers. The Prime Minister has described it as a terror attack every bit as sickening as the others this city and this country has suffered in the last 3 months. This report from our political correspondent Simon Harris contains some distressing images.
The man on his hands and knees in the road is London's latest terror suspect. He's being restrained to stop him escaping after a van hit a group of Muslim worshippers shortly after midnight. The victims were knocked down as they gave first aid to an elderly man who'd collapsed. Eyewitnesses said it was no accident.
This is deliberate. Yeah, they did it on purpose. It's something, he wasn't drunk or anything like that. It was something accident. Accidents do happen, but you don't run over 6-7 people.
The suspect is pinned to the ground.
No one touched him, no one.
An imam tries to calm the growing anger.
No one.
By now, the suspect is being restrained against a police van.
Everyone back! Everyone back!
The elderly man who was being given first aid has died. 10 others are injured. 8 of them will need to be taken to hospital.
There was one right in front of me, there was literally blood coming out of his head. There was another one on my right-hand side, he was laying on the floor. The woman that I saw, like in front of her car, I rushed towards her without even seeing my brother on the floor.
As the handcuffed suspect is put into the back of the police van, he waves. This is an area where even late at night, coffee shops and cafes are busy with Muslim customers allowed to break their Ramadan fast after sunset. There are 2 mosques close by, the Finsbury Park Mosque and the Muslim Welfare House. It was just along from there on the main Seven Sisters Road where the van mounted the pavement. Abdul Rahman Adras narrowly avoided being hit and then tackled the driver as he tried to run away.
He was saying, shouting, I want to kill more Muslims, I want to kill more Muslims. And then there were other people running after him, trying to catch him.
While you pinned him on the ground, did you talk to him? Did you find out?
I talked to him. I said, why did you do that? I asked him this question, which from my heart. I said, why have you done that? Innocent people underneath the van.
The area around this latest attack took on the all too familiar appearance of a major crime scene. A police cordon is in place, streets are closed and politicians arrived with messages of reassurance.
These have been a terrible few weeks for London, unprecedented in recent times. We've seen the horror of the fire at Grenfell Tower. We've seen the attack on London Bridge and before that Westminster Bridge, and we saw last night the terrorist attack here in Seven Sisters. We will stay a strong city.
The Prime Minister was determined not to repeat the misjudgment of last week. She visited Finsbury Park Mosque within hours of the attack.
The terrible terrorist attack that took place last night was an evil act born out of hatred, and it has devastated a community.
The local MP for this area is Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn.
The best way, in fact the only way of defeating this is the unity of all of our communities. I'm proud to represent Finsbury Park with all its 50 or 60 languages that are spoken, with all the faiths that are here.
For the 3rd time in 3 months, the terrorists have chosen to hit London. Westminster Bridge and London Bridge were the work of Islamist fanatics, but this is different. Here, the Muslim community was the clear target. Simon Harris, ITV News, Finsbury Park.
It very soon became clear that while this was an attack on the capital, it may have come from far outside it. The van used was from a hire company in Wales, and tonight the driver has been named as Darren Osborne from Cardiff. Our correspondent Rupert Evelyn is outside his house this evening. Rupert, what's happening there right now?
Well, police have spent much of the day here in Cardiff searching the house of Darren Osborne. Neighbours I spoke to said that they recognised his image, what they thought to be his image, on the news this morning. They were surprised and shocked that he might be connected in any way whatsoever to what is going on in Finsbury Park. We know that Darren has 4 children, that he has a partner who works nearby to here, we understand. Speaking to some of the neighbours here, they said that yesterday lunchtime they heard him singing to his children at home. And other neighbours said to me that he's been round to their house to help them fix various things within his home. Now, the connection here between Cardiff and the van that was used in this attack appears to be 16 miles away from here, which is where Pontyclun Van Hire is based. It's where I was earlier today. That area was being, the people at that firm, were being spoken to by detectives from the Metropolitan Police, as to have the Met Police been here in Cardiff today, working alongside South Wales Police to see what they can understand, glean in terms of this investigation and how it relates from here in Cardiff to where you are in Finsbury Park.
Absolutely. Rupert Evelyn, thank you. Clearly a developing story there as well as here this evening. So why Finsbury Park? The main mosque here was once synonymous with Islamist extremism when the radical preacher Abu Hamza was imam. But a new era began in 2005. But potentially still well known for all the wrong reasons from the past, late last night it became the target of the biggest attack against Muslims this country has seen. Ria Chatterjee on the reaction and the shock.
Yeah, I said I'm Muslim too. And decided to this government. We've got an emergency meeting right now as well. We do everything we can. So okay, I'll give you my word.
But the politician's word is not enough. This young woman feels lost.
As a Muslim, you feel so pushed out.
What would you like the government to do? Is there anything they could do?
What can they do if the hate is already out there?
If she doesn't have faith in the government, then perhaps the local community instead.
This is what the community needs, everybody working together as one community. Do not let the minority divide us.
Faith leaders spent all day at the police cordon sharing this message.
It's up to each individual to break that cycle of violence.
Love will always defeat hate and division.
The type of hate and division that Abu Hamza once brought to the Finsbury Park Mosque. It's been transformed by the local Muslim community into a place that promotes good relations across all faiths.
And we need to work together as one community and not divide ourselves. The Muslim women are the ones who are being attacked, abused whenever these incidents occur. When they target Muslim women, they keep on saying about the hijab, they keep on bringing up about the burqa.
Just a street away from where the attack happened, away from the police cordons and away from the press pack, get a sense of community life here in Finsbury Park. Faith leaders and locals have been telling all day that it is extremely diverse, with people from different backgrounds living side by side.
That there isn't a majority of any one religion, and I have never ever experienced anything bad, any bad attitude from any Muslims in this area.
As British, we hold together and we show sense of community, solidarity, help each other.
The sign outside Finsbury Park station caught people's attention today. The message clear. Ria Chatterjee, ITV News.
I'm joined now by the Finsbury Park Mosque, Mohammed Kolsbar, and Fayaz Mughal, who is from the group Tel Mama, which monitors anti-Muslim attacks. Thank you both for joining me here this evening. In the early hours of the morning, you must have got the call, you weren't there last night, the call that you potentially have been expecting that this could happen here?
it was a shocking news for us actually when we heard about it. My colleagues from the mosque called me and they said there is a serious attack on some of the worshippers who were praying in our mosque and other mosque. One fatality and few injured, and some of them are seriously injured. I mean, we are glad that people captured the attacker. And by the way, the imam who protected him until the police arrived and they arrested him, and he's in custody now.
Yeah, absolutely. Fayaz, in terms of what we're seeing in London and in Manchester and overnight, the question has to be, when will it stop? Where does this all end?
Well, the reality is, sadly, the terrorist attacks create repercussions. And the repercussions we see are in very sharp rises of anti-Muslim hate incidences across the country. We've been seeing them since 2013, since we've been set up. And the reality is we're seeing very high peaks, more frequency of incidences taking place. Now, how does this stop? Is we've got to tackle the terrorism element. But let's be clear, we've also got to tackle some of the far-right extremist networks that are in communities targeting members of the Muslim community, but also community education around Muslims is really important.
And I must point out, we still don't know the exact motivation behind last night's attack, but we have seen people, if we go back a few years, in other cities, try and target mosques, plot to bomb them. They weren't successful, but there are definitely people, it seems, intent on creating this racial war, this religious war. You were part of the Jo Cox get-together event on Saturday, marking her death and marking a scene of great unity of all faiths, of atheists coming together. And yet, so quickly after that, this happens.
Yes, it is unfortunate. Just only 2 days ago, we were remembering Jo Cox and what's happened, and many faith leaders and community leaders were addressing the communities, the local community. And just only a few days before, we have our annual community dinner iftar, when our local MP Jeremy Corbyn attended with many other prominent guests from all over the country. And here we are, after a few days, we have this nasty incident, criminal and terrorist incidents, which we have to call it as it is. It is a terrorist attack.
Which I think the government and the police have been
Theresa May today, when
clear.
she visited the mosque today, she called it a terrorist attack, which we are happy to hear that. It is no different than the terrorist attack which happened in Manchester or in Westminster or London Bridge.
Fayaz, we've seen leaders from all faith groups today stand in unity, appeal for calm. What's your message to Londoners listening to this who simply can't believe what's been going on in the capital over the past 3 months?
Well, our message is this. Targeting of members of the Muslim community simply feeds the narrative of intolerance, not just intolerance, but feeds the narrative of those extremists who set off bombs in the name of Daesh. Daesh and ISIS want this. They want this division. And by targeting Muslims, actually, it feeds into the very thing that this group wants to do against us. We can't accept that. And frankly, we have to stop what is taking place. This countercurrent of attack and then targeting on Muslim communities really has to stop.
I think most people will agree with that, Fayaz and Mohammed. Thank you very much for speaking to me tonight. Well, people here discuss what happened overnight just across this city. There were more distressing developments regarding the Grenfell fire. Charlene White is there with the details. Charlene.
Thanks very much, Nina. Well, here in North Kensington, the number of people presumed to have died in the fire rose again today. Police said at least 79 people are dead or missing, but they warned the final number could yet be higher still. This afternoon, hundreds of people joined a march led by survivors, calling for justice for those affected. While this morning, the victims were remembered with a national minute of silence. Our senior correspondent, Ron K. Phillips, reports.
As the clock struck 11, they stood together, the burnt-out tower just yards away. A moment of silence to reflect and mourn and pay respects to those who perished. The scene was repeated at the centres where the survivors are being looked after, and at the headquarters of the fire brigade, the place where this tragedy has become so personal. As the minute's silence came to an end, applause for the emergency teams returning to the charred building, and tears from those who've had to carry out the grim task of sifting through the debris. This video filmed by the fire crews, evidence of the intensity of the inferno which ravaged through the tower block, causing utter devastation to what were once family homes. Everyday furniture barely recognisable. A visual explanation of why the number of dead and missing has now risen to 79.
I've investigated major crime for most of my service, and I've seen some terrible things, but I don't think anything prepared me for what I was going to see when I was in there. The awful reality, as I've said before, is that due to the intensity of the fire and the devastation within Grenfell Tower, that we may not be able to identify everybody that died.
From the long list of those known to be unaccounted for, 4 more victims whose identities have been confirmed with the coroner. 24-year-old Khadija Say, Anthony Disson, who was 65, Abu Faz Ibrahim, and a woman whose name is not being released.
We have toiletries.
For the emergency crisis centres, a shift of focus, getting the tons of donated items to those people who've been left with absolutely nothing.
Wherever we hear there's a family in a certain hotel in a certain area and there is a need of whatever items or beddings, we would just rush to them. We have volunteers who are doing the delivery services.
While those left bewildered and devastated by this tragedy try to piece together their lives, the search of the tower, which locals are calling the tomb in the sky, continues. Ronke Phillips, ITV News.
Well, there was considerable criticism over the weekend for the way those who survived the fire but have lost their homes have been treated by the local authorities. Many families are still in hotels and have found it difficult to access the funds and aid promised to them. And tonight, a march was organised to kick off the Justice for Grenfell campaign. Rags Martel has been hearing people's frustrations.
There was no chanting. This, a silent march, but their one demand written all over their banners.
I think there's been a huge injustice here. I think there's been a complete lack of respect for human life on the part of the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea.
People should be accountable for this as well. People should pay. It's manslaughter.
Away from the march, the signs are the same. But here, former residents of Grenfell Tower met for the first time since the fire.
I mean, many have lost family members as well as their homes, all of their possessions. You know, no access to bank cards, no access to anything, passports, documentation.
Pilgrim Tucker is part of the Grenfell Action Group. She believes Kensington and Chelsea is still failing the survivors.
The council response has been unbelievably poor. I am amazed, and I keep being amazed by how awful it is, how little it is. In the first few days there was just no visibility at all from the council. Now the communication with residents is very, very poor. They're communicating with some residents, not other residents, and those residents, with good reason, do not trust the council.
Many people at the meeting are still too traumatised to talk on camera. But we found out that one mother and her child has already been moved 3 times since the fire, and there are some families still sleeping in a sports hall.
What on earth is going on? All that goodwill, and it isn't being linked up with the people who need it.
Who do you blame?
I blame the council.
The newly elected MP for Kensington worked as a councillor here for more than a decade.
What utter disdain. They treat people so rudely. They think they're a superior race. And I've been listening to this for 11 years in the council. This is why I was voted in, because people like this have had enough. And this is just an example of the total incompetence that I've been watching for years.
Officials calling themselves response pastors were finally visible 5 days after the fire. But Kensington and Chelsea were not speaking to the press today. And the emergency response has been taken over by the Grenfell Recovery Board. Some people think that Kensington and Chelsea couldn't cope with this and has now outsourced it to you.
No, I think that
that's what's happened.
Any
I genuinely believe that any local authority would be overwhelmed with the scale of this tragedy.
Tributes are still being written here, but for many, there's still no justice to speak of. Rags Martel, ITV News, Kensington.
Well, I'm joined now by the local MP for this area, Emma Dent-Coad, who you just saw in that report. Now, the march was happening just behind where we're standing now, and I went along to listen to some of the speeches, and it was just incredibly emotional. What was it like for you?
It's very, very difficult at the moment. People are really, really hurting. They're very, very angry. It's a, you know, it's a terrible time, a really terrible time.
I mean, you haven't been in your role very long in terms of being the local MP for here, and this isn't something you expect to have to deal with. So do you understand their frustrations?
Oh, absolutely. I've lived here all my life. I'm born and bred in the borough, and I've lived up this end for 30 years. I know a lot of the people who have been involved. I know a lot of the community leaders, so I'm deeply entrenched in this area.
And I think a lot of people sort of say, well, we say things are going to change, but they don't always. Are you confident that things will change in terms of when it comes to social housing, for instance? And there's been a lot of complaints about people being housed in hotels and kids not really knowing where they're coming or going. I mean, what is the support for them?
Well, change has happened. Change has happened. What's happened here has been the change, and what people have done has been the change. The utter chaos of the supposed relief packages and so on that has happened afterwards, that whole system has been really shameful. It's shameful. The government should not have to step in and send Red Cross into one of the richest areas in London to deal with a disaster like this. It's appalling. Where was the emergency planning? I'm dealing with cases every day, and I don't even have the ability to do it because even I don't know who to write to yet. We're setting this up over the next 24 hours, but I haven't known where to send people when I hear these stories. There are people sleeping in cars and in parks because they don't know where to go or how to access help.
And do you think in the next few days that will change?
It has to change. I'll make sure it changes.
And so have you been speaking to people and giving them those kinds of reassurances?
Yes, absolutely. I'll do everything I can. I'm not all powerful, but I'll do everything I can, and I won't shut up until it's sorted out.
Well, the building where this all happened is just behind us, and I know what it was like for me when I woke up that morning and saw it on fire. As someone that lives locally around here, what was it like for you?
It was absolutely horrendous, just horrendous. I couldn't imagine. And also specifically because it had been predicted, this very chain of events that caused that has been predicted by some of the tenants, and they were vilified for speaking out. They was vilified for it and marginalised and told that they were difficult and so on, and they were put on the blacklist. So people wouldn't listen to what they were saying.
Well, hopefully people are going to be listening now. Emma, thank you so much for talking to us. OK, that's all from us in North Kensington for the moment. Let's return to Nina in Finsbury Park.
Thank you, Charlene. Let's get more now on the terror attack, and I'm joined, as you can see, by Simon Harris, who's down at the scene now. What's the latest you're hearing on the suspect?
Well, we've had some more details in the last hour. He has been named, not officially by the police, but locally in Wales, from where he comes from, as Darren Osborne, who's 47 years old and a father of 4. The Welsh connection became pretty apparent straight away. The van used in the attack here in Finsbury Park had been hired from a van hire company in a small area just to the north of Cardiff. Mr. Osborne was arrested at the scene here after being detained, as we saw earlier, by some of those Muslim worshippers who were injured or came close to being injured. He was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. He has now been re-arrested on suspicion of murder and on suspicion of committing terrorism offences.
What about the security for the Muslim community tonight? After the Manchester bomb, we saw the army on the streets. We've seen armed officers after the London Bridge attack. What's happening to reassure them?
Well, Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, said today that there would be an increased police presence outside mosques and places of worship, and the Commissioner of the Met, Cressida Dick, has announced that borough commanders at police stations across London now have the power and authority to cancel police officers' leave if need be.
Incredible times. Simon Harris, thank you very much. Well, before last night, the capital's emergency services were already stretched. Before last night, London's hospitals were still treating those injured in the London Bridge terror attack and, of course, in the Grenfell fire. Elsewhere, though, if you look around this city, life, for the most part, is continuing as normal. It has to. But that doesn't mean the suffering of fellow Londoners isn't very much on all of our minds, which was apparent at the memorial to the 7/7 victims a little earlier today.
Essentially, I'm just really angry. I don't know that, but just kind of the people that have decided to take away lives of my own friends who died here on the bridge just 2 weeks ago. And now I'm having to put flowers there this afternoon because some pointless, senseless act of just evil, really. So I'm just really angry.
I'm a bit scared. Everyone I talk to, they are worried what's happening in London. These things need to be changed. Everybody waiting for a positive.
So the main frustration I have is just the fact that it's been happening quite a lot recently and nobody is doing anything about it. Don't think people are doing enough to protect us.
Every morning when I wake up, first thing I do is I look at the news, and it's always so bleak lately. After the fire, the community did get together, and after the mosque attack last night, all the religious leaders came out from different faiths, and they all had positive things to say. The question is whether the rest of the community will listen.
I think these times are here to test us at the moment, and we are proving that we are not going to be defeated. We've come together as a community, we've unified, and I think that just shows what great nation we truly are, and it's bringing out the best of people through these horrible times.
It seems to be at the moment that we're waking up in the morning just to more bad news, so hopefully we can all stick together and get through it, and just kind of stay as one.
The most important thing we can take out of it is change. Something needs to alter for us to be safe and feel safe, let alone just enjoy our lives and carry on.
Rich or poor, black or white, we're unified by tears. And we don't have to cry so much if we use our freedom to love.
Some of your thoughts during what's been a torrid time for the capital. Mary Nightingale is coming up with the very latest on the terror attack in just a moment. But from me and the London team, bye-bye.
There will be a few slight changes in the forecast. Let's take a look at that in a bit more detail. Well, over the next 24 hours, we have got a cold front that's going to gradually sink its way across us. So we will see a slight dip in temperatures, and then high pressure once again will be dominating. So more in the way of sunshine and feeling exceptionally warm out there too. Now on Thursday, you notice that high pressure starts to slip out of the way, allowing these systems to work their way across the country, bringing in some outbreaks of rain. Now most of that rain is confined to the north of us, but if we do catch some of it across the capital, it could be heavy and thundery in places. Now for the rest of this evening and tonight, there will be some cloud coming and going, but for most of us it is a dry night. We've got clear skies and temperatures are what we expect by day, so exceptionally mild out there, muggy in fact. And that's going to take us into a warm start to the day tomorrow. So it will be bright out there to begin with, but then cloud will start to drift its way across us for a time. But towards the end of the afternoon, the cloud melts away, so plenty of sunshine there. Now the winds are going to take a slight change in direction. So temperatures down a touch on today, but still, again, exceptionally warm out there. Highs into the low 30s. Out towards Gravesend, though, we're looking at highs there of around 24 degrees. And it's a similar setup on Wednesday and on Thursday. Once again, we are expecting some hot temperatures across the capital. It will be staying largely dry, but there is a chance, as I say, of us seeing some heavy thundery downpours in places. Well, these hot and sunny conditions mean little relief for hay fever sufferers. We're still expecting very high traces of grass pollen on Tuesday, and it's staying that way for the next few days.
Terror strikes London again, this time an attack on Muslims who just left Ramadan prayers in the early hours. A van ploughed into worshippers outside a mosque in North London. One man died, 10 others were injured.